There is a tragedy in loving someone so deeply that it feels like your heart might explode, yet being unable to speak those words out loud because something stronger than love is holding your voice hostage. There is a pain in watching someone you care about search for love in all the wrong places while you stand silently in the shadows, paralyzed by fears that feel more real than hope. This is a story about the kind of love that exists in silence, about the invisible chains that keep people from expressing what they feel most intensely, and about what happens when those chains finally break or when they do not. Sophie was 26 years old and exhausted from trying to find love that felt real. She had just ended another relationship with someone who seemed perfect on paper, but felt empty in reality. She was starting to believe that maybe she was the problem, that maybe she was too picky or too broken or too something. She sat in her car in the office parking lot, mascara running down her face, wondering why she kept choosing people who could not see her, could not love her the way she needed to be loved. What Sophie did not know was that the person who loved her most was watching her from 3 parking spaces away. Benjamin was 28 years old and had been working in the same office as Sophie for 2 years. From the moment he met her, he had felt something he had never felt before. It was not just attraction, though she was beautiful. It was not just admiration, though she was kind and intelligent. It was something deeper, something that felt like recognition, like his soul had been searching for hers without knowing it. Benjamin noticed everything about Sophie. He noticed the way she brought coffee to coworkers who seemed stressed. He noticed how she stayed late to help others meet deadlines, even when her own work was done. He noticed the way she laughed at terrible jokes to make people feel good about themselves. He noticed how she talked about her family with such love and loyalty. He noticed that she always chose the window seat in the break room because she liked watching the birds. He noticed everything because he loved her in a way that was all-consuming and terrifying. But Benjamin had never told Sophie how he felt. He had never asked her on a date. He had never even hinted at his feelings. To Sophie, Benjamin was just a friendly coworker, someone she chatted with occasionally but did not think about outside of work. She had no idea that Benjamin thought about her constantly, that he structured his days around the possibility of seeing her, that every conversation they had was carved into his memory like scripture. Benjamin's silence was not a choice. It was a prison built by trauma he had experienced years ago. When Benjamin was 22, he had been in a relationship with someone he loved deeply. He had been vulnerable, open, emotionally available. He had told her everything about himself, including the parts he was ashamed of, the parts he usually kept hidden. He had trusted her completely, and she had used all of that vulnerability against him. When the relationship ended badly, she had shared his private confessions with mutual friends, had mocked his emotional honesty, had made him feel like being open was the same as being weak. The humiliation and betrayal had broken something inside Benjamin. He had built walls so high and so thick that even he could not see over them anymore. He had convinced himself that vulnerability was dangerous, that expressing feelings gave other people power to hurt you, that staying silent was the only way to stay safe. For 6 years, Benjamin had not told anyone he loved them. He had not been in a relationship. He had not allowed himself to be emotionally honest with anyone. And even though he loved Sophie with an intensity that kept him awake at night, he could not speak those words. His past trauma had silenced him completely. Benjamin had tried so many times to tell Sophie how he felt. He had rehearsed conversations in his head. He had written unsent letters. He had picked up his phone to text her 100 times. But every time he got close to actually expressing his feelings, panic would flood his body. His heart would race. His hands would shake. His throat would close up. The memory of being betrayed, of having his vulnerability weaponized, would crash over him like a wave, and he would retreat back into silence. It felt safer to love her from a distance than to risk being hurt again. So Benjamin watched Sophie date other people. He listened to her talk about her relationships in the break room, offering friendly advice while dying inside. He watched her get excited about new boyfriends who would inevitably disappoint her. He watched her cry when those relationships ended. And every single time, he wanted to tell her that she deserved better, that he could love her better, that no one would ever love her the way he did. But the words stayed trapped inside him, prisoners of his fear. On this particular December evening, Benjamin had stayed late at work, finishing a project. When he came out to the parking lot, he saw Sophie sitting in her car, crying. He knew she had just broken up with her latest boyfriend because he had overheard her on the phone earlier that day. Every instinct told him to go to her, to comfort her, to finally tell her the truth. But his trauma was louder than his love. The fear was stronger than the longing. So he sat in his own car, watching her suffer, hating himself for his cowardice, but unable to overcome it. What finally broke Benjamin's silence was not courage. It was desperation. As he watched Sophie cry, something inside him snapped. He realized that his fear of being hurt again had already hurt him in the worst possible way. By staying silent, he had hurt himself more than anyone else ever could. He had denied himself the possibility of happiness because he was trying to avoid the possibility of pain. And watching Sophie cry alone when he could have been comforting her made him understand that his silence was not protecting him. It was destroying him. Benjamin got out of his car and walked over to Sophie's vehicle. He knocked on the window gently. Sophie looked up, startled, and quickly tried to wipe her tears. She rolled down the window. "Benjamin, what are you doing here so late?" "I saw you crying," Benjamin said, his voice shaking. "And I could not just drive away. Can we talk, please?" Sophie nodded and unlocked the passenger door. Benjamin got in and sat beside her in the small space. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then Benjamin said something he had been holding inside for 2 years. "Sophie, I need to tell you something, and I need you to let me finish before you respond, because if I stop, I will not be able to start again. I love you, I have loved you since the day I met you. No one has ever loved you the way I love you, because no one sees you the way I see you. I see your kindness, your strength, your intelligence, your humor, your loyalty. I see the way you make everyone around you feel valued. I see the way you give without expecting anything in return. And I have been silent about all of this for 2 years because I am terrified. I was hurt badly in the past, and that hurt made me believe that being vulnerable is dangerous. So I have watched you date people who do not deserve you, and I have said nothing. I have let you think that I am just a friendly coworker, when the truth is that you are the most important person in my life, and I am so sorry for my silence. I am so sorry that I have been too afraid to tell you what you deserve to hear, which is that you are loved deeply and completely by someone who has been standing right beside you this whole time. Sophie stared at him with wide eyes, tears still on her cheeks, but for an entirely different reason now. Benjamin, I had no idea. I thought you just saw me as a coworker. I thought you were not interested in me that way. I have been silenced by my fear, Benjamin said, but I cannot be silent anymore. Not when I watch you cry and wonder why no one loves you the way you deserve. Because someone does love you that way. I do. I always have.